Sarah Martinez had always been careful about keeping her uniform regulation perfect. Every button polished, every crease sharp, every detail exactly as the Navy demanded. But there was one thing she kept hidden beneath her standard-issue shirt, a small bronze medal that hung close to her heart on a thin chain. The USS Theodore Roosevelt was massive, stretching over 1,000 feet across the Pacific Ocean. As an ammunition specialist, Sarah spent her days in the ship's belly, handling explosives and ordnance that could level city blocks. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was essential. Without people like her, the fighter jets above couldn't complete their missions. Sarah had joined the Navy 3 years earlier, fresh out of high school in a small Texas town where opportunities were scarce. Her father had been a mechanic, her mother a waitress, and military service seemed like the best path to a stable future. She excelled in training, showing an aptitude for handling dangerous materials that impressed her instructors. The morning started like any other aboard the carrier. Sarah reported to the ammunition storage area at 600 hours, ready for another day of inventory and loading procedures. The space was cramped and filled with carefully organized weapons systems. Missiles, bombs, and various ordnance lined the walls in precise arrangements. Every item had its place, and Sarah knew the location of each piece by heart. Her team consisted of 4 other sailors, all men who had initially questioned having a woman in such a dangerous role. But Sarah had proven herself repeatedly. She could lift heavy ammunition, work in tight spaces, and maintain perfect safety protocols under pressure. Her teammates had learned to respect her skills, though some still made occasional comments about women not belonging in combat roles. "Martinez, we need to move the Hellfire missiles to Bay 3, called out Petty Officer Johnson, a burly man from Alabama who served as their team leader. "The flight deck crews are requesting them for the afternoon sortie." Sarah nodded and began the careful process of relocating the precision-guided missiles. Each one weighed over 100 pounds and cost more than most people's annual salary. She used proper lifting techniques and followed all safety procedures, double-checking every step. One mistake with these weapons could be catastrophic. As she worked, Sarah thought about the medal hidden beneath her shirt. It wasn't military-issued. The bronze disc bore the image of St. Barbara, the patron saint of those who work with explosives. Her grandmother had given it to her before she left for boot camp, along with a blessing in Spanish that Sarah could still hear in her mind. "Que Santa Barbara te proteja, mija," her grandmother had whispered, placing the medal around Sarah's neck. "She will keep you safe when you work with dangerous things." Sarah wasn't particularly religious, but wearing the medal made her feel connected to her family and her heritage. It reminded her of her grandmother's strength and the generations of strong women who had come before her. In a military environment where she often felt isolated as one of the few Latina women in her specialty, the medal provided comfort. The work was physically demanding. Sarah and her team spent hours moving ammunition, checking inventory, and preparing weapons for loading onto aircraft. The carrier's ammunition storage areas were hot and poorly ventilated, making every task more challenging. Sweat constantly dripped from her face, and her uniform stuck to her skin. During her lunch break, Sarah climbed to one of the carrier's observation decks to get some fresh air. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, its blue surface broken only by the white caps of waves. Fighter jets periodically launched from the flight deck above, their engines screaming as they catapulted into the sky. She thought about her family back in Texas. Her younger brother was starting his senior year of high school, and her parents were struggling to make ends meet. The money she sent home each month helped, but she wished she could do more. Military pay wasn't generous, especially for enlisted personnel, but it was steady income with benefits. Sarah had plans beyond her current role. She was taking correspondence courses toward a college degree, hoping eventually to become an officer. The Navy offered educational opportunities that wouldn't have been available to her otherwise. But for now, she focused on mastering her current job and proving herself worthy of advancement. Back in the ammunition storage area, the afternoon brought a rush of activity. Intelligence reports indicated possible threats in their patrol area, and the flight crews needed to be prepared for potential combat operations. Sarah and her team worked faster, loading missiles and bombs onto carts for transport to the flight deck. The work required perfect coordination. Each team member had specific responsibilities, and timing was crucial. Sarah operated the mechanical hoists that lifted heavy ordnance, while her teammates guided the weapons into position and secured them for transport. Any miscommunication could result in dropped weapons or damaged equipment. "Good work today, Martinez," Johnson said as they finished loading the last cart. "You're getting faster at this." Sarah appreciated the recognition, though she noticed it always seemed to surprise her male colleagues when she performed well. She had learned not to let their attitudes bother her too much. Proving herself through consistent performance was more effective than arguing about gender roles. As evening approached, Sarah completed her shift and headed to the mess hall for dinner. The carrier's dining facility fed thousands of sailors in multiple shifts throughout the day. The food was basic but filling. Tonight's menu included meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. She sat with other members of her work unit, listening to conversations about home, relationships, and military life. Later that night, Sarah lay in her narrow bunk, one of 60 beds crammed into her berthing compartment. The space was barely larger than a coffin, with just enough room for a thin mattress and a small locker for personal belongings. Privacy was non-existent, and the constant noise of the ship's operations made sleep challenging. She touched the metal through her shirt, thinking about tomorrow's work schedule. The carrier would be conducting flight operations again, which meant long hours in the ammunition storage areas. Sarah had learned to find satisfaction in her work's technical aspects, even though others might find it boring or dangerous. The ship rocked gently in the ocean swells, a motion that had taken weeks to get used to. Now it was comforting, like being rocked to sleep. Sarah closed her eyes and prepared for another day of serving her country in the way she knew best, handling the dangerous tools that kept America's naval aviation forces operational. She had no idea that tomorrow would change everything, that a chance encounter would reveal her hidden metal to someone who would recognize its significance in ways she never imagined. For now, she was simply another sailor doing her job, carrying her grandmother's blessing close to her heart as she served thousands of miles from home. Admiral Rebecca Thompson had been walking the ship's lower decks for 2 hours, conducting one of her unannounced inspections. As the carrier's commanding officer, she believed in seeing operations firsthand rather than relying solely on reports from her staff. The ammunition storage areas were always on her inspection list, given their critical importance to mission success. The Admiral had commanded ships for over 20 years, working her way up through the ranks in an era when female naval officers faced even greater challenges than today. She had learned to be twice as competent as her male peers to receive half the recognition. Every promotion had been earned through exceptional performance and unwavering dedication to excellence. As she approached Ammunition Storage Bay 2, Admiral Thompson heard the sound of mechanical equipment and voices coordinating a complex loading operation. She paused outside the entrance, observing the team's work without announcing her presence. This was how she gathered the most accurate picture of daily operations. Inside the bay, Sarah and her team were transferring a shipment of guided missiles that had arrived via supply ship that morning. The process required extreme precision, as any damage to the guidance systems could render the expensive weapons useless. Sarah operated the overhead crane, carefully lifting each missile while her teammates guided it into position. Admiral Thompson watched Sarah's technique with growing interest. The young sailor demonstrated exceptional skill in operating the heavy machinery, making minute adjustments to position the missiles perfectly. Her movements were confident and efficient, showing mastery that typically took years to develop. "Lower it 2 inches to port," Sarah called out to her crane operator partner, though she was actually operating the equipment herself from below. The Admiral realized Sarah was talking herself through the procedure, a technique often used by experienced technicians working with dangerous materials. As Sarah bent over to examine the missile-mounting brackets, her uniform shirt pulled slightly, and Admiral Thompson caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath the fabric. Military regulations strictly controlled what personnel could wear under their uniforms, and the Admiral's trained eye immediately noticed the irregularity. However, Admiral Thompson didn't interrupt the operation. Moving ammunition was too dangerous to disturb without urgent cause. She remained in the shadows, continuing to observe the team's work. Sarah's leadership skills became apparent as she coordinated her teammates' actions, ensuring everyone followed proper safety protocols while maintaining efficient workflow. The Admiral noticed how Sarah double-checked every connection point and verified each missile's serial numbers against the loading manifest. This attention to detail impressed her, as many sailors performed such tasks mechanically without truly understanding their importance. Sarah clearly understood that each weapon represented both tremendous destructive power and significant financial investment. "Martinez, that mounting bracket looks loose," called out one of her teammates. Sarah immediately stopped the loading process and personally inspected the bracket. She discovered a worn mounting bolt that could have failed under stress, potentially causing the missile to shift during aircraft carrier operations. Her quick identification of the problem prevented what could have been a catastrophic accident. "Good catch," Sarah told her teammate, though Admiral Thompson could see that Sarah had actually spotted the problem first. The young sailor was generous in sharing credit with her team, another mark of natural leadership ability. While Sarah's team replaced the faulty hardware, Admiral Thompson stepped forward to introduce herself. The ammunition bay immediately snapped to attention as the sailors recognized her rank. "At ease," Admiral Thompson said. "Continue with your work. I'm just conducting routine inspections." Sarah returned to operating the crane, but Admiral Thompson could see the young sailor was now nervous about performing under the commanding officer's direct observation. However, Sarah's technique remained flawless, suggesting she was well-trained and confident in her abilities. As the loading operation continued, Admiral Thompson engaged the team in conversation about their work. She asked technical questions about ammunition storage procedures, rotation schedules, and safety protocols. Sarah answered most questions, demonstrating comprehensive knowledge of both regulations and practical applications. "How long have you been working in ordnance, Martinez?" the Admiral asked. 3 years, ma'am. 2 years on shore duty at Naval Weapons Station Charleston, and 1 year aboard ship." Admiral Thompson was impressed. Most sailors required significantly more time to develop Sarah's level of expertise. The young woman had clearly dedicated herself to mastering her specialty beyond minimum requirements. During the conversation, Sarah leaned forward to check a missile's guidance system connection, and her uniform shirt gaped slightly at the neck. Admiral Thompson clearly saw the bronze medal hanging from a thin chain. The sight triggered a flood of memories from the Admiral's own early career. 25 years earlier, Ensign Rebecca Thompson had been one of only 3 female officers aboard a destroyer. She had faced constant questioning of her competence and dedication to military service. During a particularly difficult deployment, her grandmother had sent her a package containing a small religious medal and a letter explaining its significance to their family's military tradition. Admiral Thompson's grandfather had carried a similar medal during World War II, serving in the Pacific Theater as a Navy gunner's mate. Her uncle had worn one during Vietnam, and her cousin had carried the same tradition into the Gulf War. The medal represented not just religious faith, but a family heritage of military service and protection from the dangers of naval warfare. The Admiral had worn her own family medal throughout her early career, hidden beneath regulation uniforms, just as Sarah was doing now. It had provided comfort during lonely deployments and dangerous operations. Eventually, as she advanced in rank and gained confidence, she had stopped wearing it daily, but she still carried it during particularly challenging situations. Seeing Sarah's medal brought back those memories of being young, isolated, and far from family while serving her country. Admiral Thompson recognized the significance of what the young sailor was wearing. This wasn't jewelry or fashion. It was a connection to home, heritage, and protection during dangerous work. The Admiral decided not to address the uniform regulation violation immediately. Instead, she continued observing Sarah's work performance and interaction with her teammates. What she saw reinforced her positive impression of the young sailor's potential. Sarah treated her male colleagues with professional respect while maintaining her own authority. She didn't try to prove herself through aggressive behavior or by adopting masculine mannerisms. Instead, she demonstrated competence through consistent performance and technical knowledge. This approach had clearly earned her teammates' respect. As the afternoon progressed, Admiral Thompson accompanied Sarah's team through several more ammunition handling operations. Each task reinforced her assessment of Sarah's abilities. The young sailor possessed technical skills, leadership potential, and work ethic that exceeded most personnel at her experience level. More importantly, Sarah demonstrated the kind of character the Navy needed in its future leaders. She was thorough without being slow, careful without being timid, and confident without being arrogant. She took responsibility for her team's safety and performance while giving credit to others for successes. Admiral Thompson also observed how Sarah handled the stress of working under her commanding officer's scrutiny. Rather than becoming flustered or making mistakes, Sarah maintained her usual standards while occasionally offering explanations of procedures for the Admiral's benefit. This showed emotional maturity and confidence in her professional abilities. By late afternoon, Admiral Thompson had seen enough to form a clear opinion about Sarah Martinez. The young sailor represented exactly the kind of person the Navy should develop for increased responsibility. Her technical competence, leadership potential, and personal character made her an ideal candidate for advancement opportunities. However, the matter of the concealed medal still needed to be addressed. Admiral Thompson could have simply ignored the uniform regulation violation, but she recognized an opportunity for a different kind of intervention. The medal clearly meant something important to Sarah, and the Admiral wanted to understand that significance before taking any action. As the day shift ended and Sarah's team prepared to turn over operations to the evening crew, Admiral Thompson made her decision. She would speak with Sarah privately about what she had observed, but rather than focusing on the regulation violation, she would explore the story behind the medal and its meaning to the young sailor. "Martinez, please remain behind for a moment," Admiral Thompson said, as the other sailors prepared to leave. "I'd like to discuss some observations from today's operations." Sarah's face showed concern, clearly worrying that she had made some mistake during the day's work. She stood at attention, awaiting whatever correction or criticism the Admiral was about to deliver. Admiral Thompson waited until they were alone before speaking again. The conversation she was about to have would require privacy and mutual trust. She had learned over the years that the most important leadership moments often happened in quiet conversations between individuals, away from the formal structure of military hierarchy. Admiral Thompson gestured for Sarah to sit on one of the equipment crates, creating a more relaxed atmosphere despite the military setting. Sarah remained standing at first, unsure whether the invitation was genuine or a test of protocol. The Admiral smiled slightly and sat down herself, making it clear that formal military bearing wasn't required for this conversation. "Martinez, I've been watching your work today, and I'm impressed by your technical skills and leadership abilities," Admiral Thompson began. "You clearly have potential for increased responsibility in the Navy." Sarah felt relief that she wasn't in trouble, but remained cautious about where the conversation might lead. In her experience, praise from senior officers often came with unexpected assignments or additional duties. "Thank you, ma'am. I try to do my best work every day. Admiral Thompson studied Sarah's face, noting the young sailor's careful composure. She recognized the defensive posture of someone who had learned to be guarded around authority figures. Building trust would require a different approach than standard military interaction. Tell me about your family, Martinez. What brought you to Navy service? The personal question surprised Sarah. Senior officers rarely showed interest in enlisted personnel's backgrounds beyond what appeared in their service records. She hesitated before answering, unsure how much information was appropriate to share. My family is from Texas, ma'am. Small town, not many opportunities. Military service seemed like the best path to a stable career and education benefits. Admiral Thompson nodded, recognizing a familiar story. Many sailors joined for similar economic reasons, seeking advancement opportunities unavailable in their hometowns. However, she sensed there was more to Sarah's story. What does your family think about your military service? They're proud, ma'am. My parents worry about the danger, but they understand this was my best chance for a future. My grandmother especially supports my decision. At the mention of her grandmother, Sarah unconsciously touched her shirt where the medal lay hidden. The gesture was subtle, but Admiral Thompson caught it. This was the opening she had been waiting for. Martinez, I noticed you're wearing something under your uniform that appears to be jewelry. You know that's against regulations. Sarah's face went pale. She had been so careful to keep the medal concealed, and now she faced potential disciplinary action for a violation that could affect her advancement prospects. Her hand moved protectively to her throat. Ma'am, I can explain? Admiral Thompson held up her hand to stop Sarah's explanation. Before you say anything, let me tell you something about my own experience. The Admiral reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small silver medal on a thin chain. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the similar religious imagery, another St. Barbara medal, though older and more worn than her own. This belonged to my grandfather, who served in World War II. He carried it through battles in the Pacific, including Guadalcanal and Okinawa. My family has a tradition of naval service, and this medal has been passed down through generations. Sarah stared at the Admiral's medal, trying to process this unexpected revelation. She had never imagined that senior officers might carry similar personal items or understand the emotional significance of such traditions. I wore this medal throughout my early career, Admiral Thompson continued. Hidden under my uniform just like yours. It connected me to my family's history and provided comfort during difficult deployments. I understood the risk of violating regulations, but the personal meaning outweighed those concerns. The Admiral's honesty created an atmosphere of trust that Sarah hadn't expected. For the first time in the conversation, she relaxed slightly, realizing that she wasn't facing punishment, but rather understanding from someone who shared similar experiences. My grandmother gave me this medal before I left for boot camp, Sarah said, touching her shirt where the bronze disc lay hidden. She said St. Barbara would protect me when working with explosives. It's been with me through every day of my naval service. Admiral Thompson smiled, recognizing the parallel between their stories. St. Barbara, the patron saint of those who work with dangerous materials. Your grandmother chose well. What else did she tell you about military service? She said our family has always had strong women who served their country in different ways. She was a factory worker during World War II, building aircraft parts. She wanted me to carry on that tradition of service. The Admiral was impressed by the depth of family military tradition that Sarah represented. Too often, military leaders focused only on individual performance without understanding the heritage and values that motivated exceptional service members. Martinez, I want to share something with you about leadership and regulations. Sometimes the most important rules aren't written in manuals. They're the personal values and traditions that guide our decisions when no one is watching. Sarah listened intently, sensing that this conversation would be significant for her future naval career. Your medal represents something more important than a uniform regulation. It connects you to your heritage, your family's values, and your personal commitment to service. Those connections make you stronger in ways that military training alone cannot achieve. Admiral Thompson paused, considering her next words carefully. What she was about to offer could change Sarah's career trajectory significantly. I'm recommending you for advancement to Petty Officer Second Class, effective immediately. Your technical skills and leadership potential exceed your current rank's responsibilities. Additionally, I'm nominating you for the Navy Commendation Medal for exceptional performance of duty. Sarah was stunned. Advancement typically took years, not hours. She had hoped for promotion eventually, but never expected such rapid recognition from the ship's commanding officer. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank me yet, Admiral Thompson said with a slight smile. With advancement comes increased responsibility. I'm also assigning you as leading petty officer for ammunition handling operations aboard this ship. You'll be responsible for training new personnel and ensuring safety standards are maintained. The promotion represented everything Sarah had hoped for in her naval career. However, Admiral Thompson wasn't finished with her announcements. There's something else, Martinez. I'm also recommending you for Officer Candidate School. Your combination of technical expertise, leadership ability, and personal character makes you exactly the kind of person the Navy needs as a commissioned officer. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. Officer Candidate School represented a path to commissioned rank that would transform her career prospects completely. However, it also meant leaving her current specialty and taking on entirely different responsibilities. Ma'am, I'm honored by your confidence, but I love working with ordnance. I don't want to leave technical work just to become an officer. Admiral Thompson was pleased by Sarah's response. Too many people sought promotion for its own sake, without considering whether new positions matched their interests and abilities. Sarah's reluctance actually reinforced the Admiral's assessment of her character. Martinez, the Navy needs technical officers who understand operations from the deck level. Your experience handling ammunition doesn't disappear when you become an officer. It makes you more effective at managing technical operations. You could eventually command entire weapon systems or ordnance facilities. This perspective helped Sarah see officer rank not as abandoning her specialty, but as expanding her ability to contribute to naval operations. She began to understand how her current expertise could translate into greater responsibility and impact. I would be honored to attend Officer Candidate School, ma'am. Admiral Thompson stood up, signaling that their conversation was concluding. However, she had one final matter to address. Regarding your medal, Martinez, I'm not going to cite you for a uniform violation. However, I want you to understand something important about leadership. As you advance in rank, you'll face situations where personal values conflict with regulations. Those moments test your character and judgment. Sarah nodded, understanding that the Admiral was sharing wisdom gained through years of command experience. Sometimes the right decision isn't the easy one or the obvious one. Your grandmother's medal represents values worth preserving, but you'll need to find appropriate ways to honor those values as your responsibilities increase. The Admiral reached into her pocket and pulled out a small presentation box. Inside was a gold lapel pin featuring St. Barbara, designed to be worn on dress uniforms within regulations. This pin can be worn openly on your dress uniform. It honors the same tradition as your medal while respecting military appearance standards. Consider it a gift from one sailor who understands family traditions to another. Sarah accepted the gift with gratitude, realizing that Admiral Thompson had found a way to honor her heritage while addressing the regulation issue. The pin would allow her to display her connection to St. Barbara without violating uniform standards. As they prepared to leave the ammunition storage area, Admiral Thompson had one final observation. "Martinez, you impressed me today, not because of your technical skills, though they're excellent. You impressed me because you treated dangerous work with appropriate respect while maintaining confidence in your abilities. That balance is what we need in naval leaders." Sarah left the conversation transformed in ways she was only beginning to understand. Within hours, she had been promoted, recommended for officer training, and recognized by her commanding officer as someone with exceptional potential. More importantly, she had found a senior leader who understood and respected the personal values that motivated her service. Over the following months, Sarah excelled in her new responsibilities as leading petty officer. She trained new ammunition handlers with the same attention to safety and precision that had caught Admiral Thompson's attention. When she eventually left for officer candidate school, her replacement had been thoroughly prepared to maintain the high standards she had established. Years later, as Lieutenant Commander Martinez stood on the bridge of her own ship, she still carried her grandmother's medal, now accompanied by Admiral Thompson's St. Barbara pin. Both items reminded her that leadership meant honoring traditions while adapting to new challenges, and that the strongest officers were those who never forgot the values that brought them to service in the first place. The chance encounter between a young sailor and an observant admiral had changed both their lives, proving that recognition and mentorship could transform careers when combined with dedication, character, and respect for the traditions that make military service meaningful.